Hello and welcome to Real Estate Basics. My name is Mike Hansen. I am very excited to be offering this free webinar YouTube course for people. This course is designed to be a general guide for real estate transactions, whether you're buying real estate, selling real estate, or just looking to refresh yourself on how the process works. Remember, the average person only buys 3 or owns 3 homes throughout their lives. And so even a homeowner could pretty much be a beginner or be inexperienced because they haven't transacted in a long time. So this course is designed to just be a refresher for them or an overview on the process of buying or selling real estate. It's going to be laid out into 5 sections. So the first 5 sections will cover kind of the buy side, and then the second 5 sections will be designed for owners, what they can do, and how they can leverage their real estate and or sell their real estate if that comes down to it. I'm excited to color in some details as we go forth. And if you have any more questions or info, you can always drop a comment, shoot me a message, shoot me an email. My socials are on here, my email's on here, and I'm happy to be a resource for anybody. So let's get into it. A little bit about me. My name is Mike. Like I said, I'm a Northern California native. I was born in Napa. My family and I own and operate a vineyard and cattle ranch here in Sonoma County. I'm a former lifestyle wellness executive. I used to be in personal training and rose up through the ranks to become vice president in a prominent lifestyle wellness company. I got my MBA from Sonoma State and decided to pursue a full-time real estate career. My focus of my business is largely on vineyard assets, winery assets, but I do love residential real estate, and I really believe strongly in the capacity of real estate to build wealth in the long term for almost everybody. So that's a little bit about me. Before we get started, I just want to talk about the fact that this course really won't dive deeply into commissions. Commissions are and have always been negotiable when it comes to representation on either the buy side or the sell side. There are some conventions and there are some normal things and patterns that professionals have kind of gotten into over the years. But really, I just want you to know when it comes to commissions, have an open conversation with your representative if you're choosing to use one. You don't even have to use a representative, but if you are going to use one, have a conversation straight up with them and just say, hey, look, how does commission work? Because in today's world, it actually is changing. There's been litigation on what advisories have to go out, what disclosures have to be there, what forms and contracts people need to be in. So that environment is consistently changing. And it's important to, have that conversation, be straight up with your agent, and you'll get to the bottom of that. So just know that we're not going to dive deeply into that in this course. All right, let's jump into the buyer's guide. We're going to go through real quick the 5 sections that are going to be a part of the buyer's guide. Section 1 will be where to get started. Section 2 is going to be the deal environment. Section 3 is going to be when and where to buy. Section 4 will be negotiation and strategy. And then Section 5 is going to be escrow, closing, and costs, okay? So let's get into video number 1. Video number 1, where to start, all right? So you're going to need to save up some money and have some cash ready for your down payment if you're going to be purchasing a home. There are some programs where you don't have to have a down payment. Those are kind of exclusively VA programs, and we are seeing some grants that are coming out to support, right now Kamala Harris is running on a campaign where she's saying she's going to give $25,000 to qualifying people who need a down payment. So what you need to understand is that you got to save some cash for a down payment. Understand your monthly income and expenses, what you can realistically afford from a monthly basis, because really a mortgage is a monthly payment that you're making and it's going to be a deduction. People tend to target around 30% of their gross income as a good ratio. So keep that benchmark in mind, but really just understand you don't want to be in a space where you're over leveraging yourself from a monthly cash flow standpoint. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of a crappy life. So the next one is down payment. Do I really need 20%? The answer is no. It's not really a realistic thing, especially in California, Northern California, where I live. So 20%, the reason a lot of people put it down is because you can avoid what's called private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is just a way for the lender to cover their own butt because they're taking on a lot of risk when it comes to lending over an 80% loan to value loan. So, most actual loans, like a conventional loan or an FHA loan, start around a 3% requirement. And just to do some quick math, right, on $1 million house, do you want to put down 200,000 or do you want to put down 30 grand, or what's more realistic for you? And for most people, what's more realistic is to put down a lower amount, maybe 5%, maybe 10%, and the PMI generally will drop off before 20% equity has been built up in the home, as long as you've made consistent payments. So 20% isn't necessary. It's kind of a big myth that's out there. Types of mortgages. There's a lot of different types of mortgages out there. There are mortgages that are conventional. There are first-time homebuyer mortgages, FHA loans. There are VA loans, which are special loans for veterans. There are loans that can wrap in the cost of improvements, such as a 203K. So there's a lot of different types of mortgages, and the most important thing is that when you're qualifying and you're meeting with a loan officer, that you're talking to them about the different options, right? Maybe what works best for you is an adjustable rate mortgage, and you don't want to take on a 30-year fixed because the rate environment is such that it might be advantageous, or there's a program that might allow an interest rate buy down. So what's really important here is that you talk with a loan officer and you discuss with them the different options that are available to you, not just going for, what's the first thing that they offer you, but asking and learning through the process. Okay. All right. And with that, we're going to jump into section 2. Section 2 is the deal environment. Okay. So, jumping into section 2, the deal environment. The governing principle here is supply and demand. All right. If there is more supply in your market and demand is low, then pricing is going to go down. If there is less supply and there's high demand, pricing is going to go up. And that's a very basic cursory kind of relationship that you should understand. Also, there's an aspect of, are rents cheaper than mortgages? If rents are cheaper than mortgages, it might not be in your best interest to sign up for a mortgage and buy a house when renting is cheaper and you could save money. If owning a home and building equity in a home is something that you value or that you want to start working towards, then finding a market where mortgages are cheaper than rents would be kind of an ideal situation. That said, I live in California, Northern California. That's not going to happen here. Mortgages are more expensive, but owning property up here generally appreciates and generally is a good investment when it comes to getting a return. All right. Interest rates affect the affordability of money. So the federal government sets interest rates called the Fed. The Fed will set free funds rate, which is essentially the credit rate or the interest rate that banks charge each other to loan each other money. That will affect mortgage rates, especially 30-year mortgage rates or anything that's tied to mortgage-backed securities. So when the federal funds rate drops or the Fed cuts rates, what happens is usually mortgage rates will drop, and it's at a slightly greater clip than the federal rate. So if you see the federal rate drop 25 basis points, you might see average interest rates drop 40 or 0.4% or something like that. What you should know here also is that location and population are going to be a pretty big factor when it comes to pricing, when it comes to the environment and competition. For somewhere that's really populated and there's a lot of people who want to buy a home there, and there's a lot of people living there, and there's not much real estate, it just really affects the pricing because there's a lot of demand and there's not a lot of supply. So location and population are really going to dictate what the pricing is going to be. And then the last thing is the swarm, right? So when interest rates drop, I call it the swarm. A lot of people who maybe were right on the cusp of affording a home, they swarm into the market, and there can be a false upward pressure on pricing that creates like a mini bubble in certain areas, right? So just be aware that when interest rates drop, you might not get a great deal on a home because having a bunch of buyers flood into a market could falsely push the pricing of the homes up because there's a lot of competition and bidding, and you might see a bit of a bubble there. So great. Let's move on to section 3. Section 3 is what and where to buy. The governing principle here is buy what you can afford and don't stretch yourself thin, okay? Let's say you take out a mortgage that on a monthly basis is 70% of your gross income. You're not going to be able to afford food. It's not a great idea to stretch yourself that thin. And also, you probably won't get financing for it. So a mortgage officer probably won't qualify you for something that's absolutely got a high chance of bankrupting you. But, just use common sense. Don't overstretch yourself just to buy a house. You're putting yourself at a lot of risk for things like foreclosure. So, property type. This is going to be very personal to kind of where you're at in life, right? If you can only afford, in this area, let's say a $400,000 2-bed townhome or a condo, and it's important to you to own, and you think you can get leverage over time by building up and trading up, which is a common strategy, then buy a townhome or a condo. You don't necessarily need to get that nice house in a single family residence in the suburb. If you're really trying to push the strategy, maybe what you're looking for is a multifamily. Maybe you're trying to buy a duplex and rent one side out and use it to kind of house hack your way into more equity faster. So it really should just line up with your goals, okay? And it should also line up with your personal and family needs, right? Do you need to be around good schools? Do you need to be around amenities? Are you a lifestyle person where you're looking to, have a park close by or hiking or nature? Do you need a backyard? Right? Do you have pets or do you want to have pets? And then there's kind of the city versus suburban. Do you want to be more in a downtown place where there's lots of restaurants and lots of places for you to go check out? Or do you want the quiet? Would you rather be in a suburban area where, the streets are a little safer, it's a little quiet? And so that sort of thing should come into your thought process when you're thinking about what and where to buy, okay? And then the last thing is going to be long-term home value. I think people look at real estate as half necessity, half investment strategy, okay? So if you are going to buy a house and you're thinking about, I want to get long-term value appreciation on my purchase, then what you're looking for essentially is not a diamond in the rough. You don't want the best house in a bad neighborhood. You want the worst house in a great neighborhood. Okay, so if you're looking for value appreciation, look around. Don't just look at the property itself. Look at everything around it. Check out the neighborhood. Check out what places have sold for, and do some research, right? So there is an opportunity for long-term appreciation. There is an average appreciation in general of real estate, but that fluctuates depending on where you are on the location. So, the 3 L's, location, 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 make sure you're taking a look around, okay? With that, we're going to move into section number 4. Which is going to be offers and negotiation. All right, section number 4, offers and negotiation. Okay, so you found a house. Now what? You found a house that you like. Now what? What you're going to do is obviously you're going to prepare an offer. We're assuming that you've been pre-approved, you've been qualified, you know that you can kind of afford it. So you're going to prepare an offer with the deal environment in mind, right? Thinking back to, okay, are the interest rates up? Are interest rates down? Are people flooding into the market? What's the timing like on this property? How long has it been on the market, right? And you're going to prepare an offer, assuming you really want this house, you're going to prepare an offer that reflects your urgency in the eyes of the seller, okay? In general, offers include purchase price, specific costs, what costs might be covered, escrow timing, what contingencies you have, whether you're going to have inspections or a loan contingency if you're getting a loan. Okay, so all that information is going to be wrapped up into what's called the purchase offer, purchase agreement, and that's going to get sent over to the sellers. Okay, now inspections and disclosures are very important. That is your negotiating leverage. Inspections, a lot of times a seller will have let's say a structural pest inspector come out and take a look at the home and write up an inspection. And let's say there's an outbuilding, right? They might not have the outbuilding inspected. And maybe they only have the main residence inspected, okay? And so inspections, yes, it's really nice when they're provided by the seller, but keep in mind, sellers are going to have their own motivations and they're going to steer the process in a direction that's in their favor. So really the rule of thumb is it's always best to get an inspection yourself, all right? And I like to talk about the 3 systems, right? There's the bones, which is the actual structural component of the home, the foundation, all of the structural beams, right? And roof supports or any joists, okay? There's going to be the respiratory system. Respiratory system essentially is HVAC, right? Cooling, heating, furnace, ducting, and then the vascular system. So plumbing, piping, natural gas, anything like that, utilities. So those are the three sections. Make sure you get a good understanding of the home, because those things can get expensive when it comes time to renovate if you have to, right? And also, it's going to factor into your negotiation. At the end of the day, it's all about cash flow. You can get caught up in trying to beat up an owner and say, I want the best deal, and get every inspector and their mom to come take a look at the house. But what that ends up doing is it could end up making the seller sour on the deal. I was just at a house the other day. It's contingent, right? It's in contract, but I called the agent and I said, hey, what's going on? He said, man, this buyer is beating us up. They've had 6 different types of inspectors out. We think they're going to ask for $100,000 off this thing. And he said, and I'm just not sure my sellers are going to be keen on doing all of this work or accepting a huge $100,000 concession. And so this deal might fall through, right? So that can happen. If you try and beat up the owner too much and you come back with a counteroffer, that counteroffer is theirs to deny, okay? So that might not work out in your favor. If you really want the house, just remember, at the end of the day, it's all about cash flow. Make sure you can afford what you're buying on a monthly basis and go from there, okay? All right, so we're going to move into Section 5 next. Section 5 is escrow and closing. Section 5, escrow and closing. So a lot of people say escrow. What does that even mean? All right, escrow is a very simple thing. Escrow is a third-party account that keeps any of the money that's part of a transaction and keep track of all of the records. So any contracts, any disclosures, anything that's been signed, any inspections, they hold all of this documentation. They audit it and make sure everything that needs to be part of the transaction is included. And they keep any monies that's moving. So the deposit, they'll hold on to it. When the loan funds, it gets put into that escrow account and then it gets distributed back to the seller. Okay, so escrow is simply just an account that holds everything. Usually it's run by a title officer. Sometimes a brokerage has an in-house escrow officer, that sort of thing. So the escrow period is a period of time that is stated in the purchase agreement in which due diligence is performed. The due diligence may be inspections. It's definitely going to be, if there's a loan involved, it's definitely going to be the loan officer getting the loan funded by the originator of the loan. That escrow period is essentially just a period of time outlined by the purchase agreement that encapsulates all of the due diligence that's going to happen in the middle. Closing costs. Okay, closing costs are usually paid by the buyer. Sometimes there could be a credit to cover from the seller. Generally includes escrow fees, loan originating costs, loan broker fees, and you can estimate it between 2 and 5% of the purchase price. And then, you're going to go to the closing meeting. You're going to have a super tired hand from signing all those docs, and congratulations on your purchase. Here's your keys. Okay. So let's recap the buyer's guide. We went through where to get started. We went through the deal environment. We went through what and where to buy. Went through negotiation and strategy. Finally, we've been through the escrow, closing, and costs. Okay. So that wraps up the buyer's section. Next, we're going to go to the owner's guide. The owner's guide is going to talk about, what an owner can do, either if they're planning on selling their house, whether or not they should sell their house, and all of that. So thanks for joining me for the buyer's guide. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to drop a comment, shoot me an email, comment on my Instagram, any of that sort of stuff. I'm sure I'll be sharing this across platforms. So thanks so much, and we're going to jump into the owner's guide. All right, now we're into the owner's guide. The owner's guide sections are going to be the question, do I rent or do I sell? This is a big question, and we're going to go through it. Number 2, timing and the market. Number 3, preparing your house for selling. Number 4, pricing strategy, how to price for sale. And number 5, offer review and closing. Okay, so section 1. The big question, rent or sell, all right? The first thing you need to do is understand the goal. Is your goal monthly cash flow and building leverage and building wealth, or is your goal liquidity? A lot of people get really bent out of shape about this topic because they say, well, you should never sell real estate and you should always hold on to it. And all I'm saying is, you don't necessarily need to always hold your real estate. There are life circumstances that may dictate that you sell. So that said, the opposite is true. Selling isn't necessary to buy. there are types of loans or equity lines of credit that you could use that can actually, you can use your old house to buy a new house without selling your old house. So, understand the goal, understand where you're at in life. All right. The next part is the rental environment versus your mortgage, right? If you bought at a time when, whether it was a long time ago, and let's say in this area, it's pretty common that somebody bought at a 2.5% interest rate, and their mortgage for a 3-bedroom house is, $2,200 a month, but they could rent it out for $4,000. That's a cash flowing mortgage, right? And you can turn that around and you could use that projected rental income to qualify for the purchase of another home through what's called a DSCR. All right. So you want to take a look at the rental environment and just see how it stacks up against your current mortgage. Okay. Interest rates effect on the rental market. All right. Higher rates may push buyers out of the purchase market because cost of money has gotten more expensive. So when that happens, more people are forced into the rental market, and what can actually happen is rents may increase, right? So higher interest rates could push rental rates up, right? Less people are going to be jumping into the market to buy. So it might be a good time to rent one of your properties instead of selling it, right? Lower interest rates on the flip side are going to increase property value because you'll get more people into the market. Demand will go up. Supply may go down or supply may stay stable. But when there's more demand, your pricing is going to go up, right? So when there's a high interest rate environment, it might not be a good time to sell your house. Lower interest rate environment tends to push prices up. If you want premium dollar for your investment, you may just wait until interest rates go down. If you have to move, right? If you're in a life stage where you're packing up and heading to another state, or let's say you're just done with wanting to manage a rental, or you're in a period of your life where you just no longer are interested in doing a bunch of work and you're getting ready to wind down and retire, right? There are different life stages when you have different goals, and also your risk tolerance, right? So when you're older, you might have very low risk tolerance and not want to risk your money at all. It can be a risk to be holding on to real assets, right? You might want to liquidate and for instance, put your money into bonds or something like that. It just all depends on your life stage, okay? So just know that in general, it's okay to have a preference one way or another. It's okay. You should take into account where you're at in life. It's not always better just to hold all your real estate forever. For some people, that works, not for everybody. Okay, all right, next is going to be timing and the market. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this in the buyers section. Just know that there are buyers and sellers market, and you want to know the inventory and the demand in your market. If there's low supply and there's a lot of demand, you might get a price premium regardless of interest rate environments. The interest rate environment is always going to come into play, as it does with buyers, it does for sellers, because if the interest rates are low and a lot of people flood into the market, it could be a great time where you could achieve a really high price for your home, right? So paying attention to what the mortgage interest rates are kind of averaging will give you a sense of whether or not it's a good time to sell, or if you should hold on and wait for a lower interest rate environment. All right. Seasonality. You don't want to sell when it's raining, all right? What can I say besides that? When the days are longer and it's warm outside, homes look really good and appealing. And there is a definite seasonality. You can see it in the data. Q2 and Q3 have way more sales than Q1 and Q4. Okay, so you're going to get the best price. You're going to have the lowest days on market if you sell in that period of time, okay? So don't try and sell in the dead of winter unless you absolutely have to. Wait for the days to be warm and for people to want to go out and homestead, okay? Use that seasonality to your benefit, all right? And then valuation, right? Just understand that the opinion of value, aka a market value, is different than an appraisal. An appraisal takes into account replacement costs. It does to some degree take into account relevant comps, but it's not the same as what the market's going to get, all right? So let's say you got $1 million appraisal. It could easily sell for $1.2 million if there's a lot of demand. Right? The appraisal doesn't always line up with the market value. So understand the difference between those two things. Maybe stay away from Zestimates. Zestimates are all over the place. And in my area, Zestimates tend to be low because there's a lot of demand, not a lot of supply. Okay, so valuation is important. Talk with a professional. Take a look at the comps that actually have sold yourself. You can do that on Zillow or Redfin or whatever. And, educate yourself. All right, with that, we're going to jump into Section 3. Section 3 is preparing your house. All right, section 3, preparing your house. So, first thing you want to do for sure is get the key inspections. Okay, key inspections would include pest, home, roof, chimney, pool, anything that you have that's kind of a specialty item on your house. You want to get it inspected. And the reason you want to do this is not so much to just furnish information, but to give yourself negotiating leverage as it comes to your asking price. If you ask for $1 million and there's 100,000 worth of updates to do, then you're pretty much saying that the home with all those issues corrected is 1,100,000, right? So it gives yourself leverage in the negotiation process. You want to rectify the major issues. There's a section of the pest inspection called Section 1 items, right? All the Section 1 items are pretty much just identified as structural or pest issues that are major issues, right? And if you don't clear those, certain types of loans won't get funded, right? So for a VA loan, they won't underwrite a loan if there are Section 1 items still on the pest inspection that have not been rectified. So to have the widest buyer pool that you can and therefore drive the price up theoretically as high as you can, you want to rectify these major issues, aka Section 1. All right, curb appeal and landscaping. Okay, so as you're getting closer to listing your home, you want to take care of the outside of your house for the most part just because of pictures, right? People imagine themselves in the house or hanging out in the backyard based on the pictures that they see online on Zillow or wherever. So you want to make sure that it's very clean looking. If somebody does drive by and they see a for sale sign in front, you don't want it looking like a dump. But for the most part, you want pictures to say 1,000 words, and you want people to be able to imagine themselves having a beautiful place to live. Why make improvements? I touched on this a moment ago. You want to make improvements to give yourself negotiating leverage during escrow, right? Once you're in an escrow period or you're under contract, you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the best chance to have a smooth transaction, ultimately for that transaction to close. Okay, so you can make these improvements. It might give you back some value. There's another option, right? A good example would be like a garage door. If you replace a garage door with a new modern garage door, it might cost you $1,500. It might get you $5,000 on the purchase price. And you won't be able to identify that as a line item, but it might make that curb appeal that much better, that it draws in another buyer, and then that buyer is ultimately the one that wins a negotiation that's $10,000 higher than another buyer. You never know what little thing is going to make somebody's heart jump. And so, making these improvements is going to give yourself the best chance at a price. And sometimes there's an outsized return compared to the investment. Okay. Section 4, pricing strategy. All right. Section 4, pricing strategy. So the first thing you need to identify is, what is the goal, right? Is it timing? Do you need to get it done fast? Is it the highest dollar amount? Is it the type of buyer? Right? Do you not want to sell to somebody who's going to do short-term rental, for instance? Right? Is it discretion? A lot of high net worth individuals don't want their $10 million asset out in the public. Right? So identify what the goal is, and you can start to think about how to price accordingly. All right? Obviously, you're going to do a comparative analysis. You're going to take a look at similar homes around your area, if there are some, and you're going to take into account the updates, the renovations, proximities, corner influences, across the street from the park, that sort of thing. Okay? Keep in mind that there's always going to be a perceived price, right? If the days on market for your house start reaching 30, 40, right? There's going to be a perception in the marketplace that you're overpriced. Okay? So you want to make sure that you're kind of following the golden rule here, which is price it low and watch it blow. If there's a market range for your home, let's say it's from 800,000 to $1 million, right? You want to price in the bottom 1/3. So don't go over, let's call it 850 or 875, right? Price it low, watch it blow, and hopefully you get into the golden ticket, which is a bidding war, right? Bidding wars are ultimately what push prices way up. And if you price it low, you're going to have the widest possible buyer pool of people trying to enter in to make an offer for your home, and ultimately you're going to get the best value. Right? So that's really pricing strategy in a nutshell. For different types of assets, maybe for a winery or vineyard asset, might be a little different. You might want to just price it appropriately. And, but for homes, pretty much this is the case. All right? So we're going to get into Section 5 here. Section 5 is offer review and closing. Okay, so when you get an offer, you want to look at the contract, read the contract. Not everybody does this, or have your agent really dig through the contract. Favorable terms from your point of view might be different. As we talked about, maybe you want to get this done as quickly as possible. Price is not as important. Somebody's offering a 10-day close versus a better price, but a 30-day close. And financing, right? Take a look at the contingencies that somebody's spelled out in there, okay? Contingencies will include loan, inspection, appraisal, right? If timing is your thing, then an all-cash offer where all the contingencies are waived might be your preference, right? So check out the offer, review the contingencies, okay? And then consider a counter versus a multiple counter, right? So if you get multiple offers, you might choose one and say, okay, I like this offer, but I'm going to counter you X amount of dollars higher or something like that, right? But if you have two offers, you can do what's called a multiple counter, right? Where you say, hey, there are multiple offers. I'm going to counter you both, right? And this could be a way where you and your agent could work the bidding war to your favor. And so, consider counter versus multiple counter. All right, closing statements and commissions, okay? So pretty much the way it's been is that sellers receive money from the buyers, and then the commissions are paid out of that, right? That's all going to be included in your closing statement, all right? And it'll give you a breakdown of all the monies either distributed or what earnings you're going to get from the transaction, okay? You're going to go do the big signing, which is essentially the final disclosures and the transfer statement, and then you will have sold your house. Congratulations, you got a bunch of money. Woohoo! Seller's Guide recap. We've been through the question, do I rent or do I sell? We've been through timing and the market. We've been through preparing your house for selling, pricing strategy, escrow, closing, and costs. Okay? And with that, we've wrapped up the Seller's Guide. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have anything you want me to cover in the next video series, please feel free. Shoot me an email. Tag me on Instagram at HansonLand. I'm going to post some of this on Instagram. Check out my website, MikeHanson.realtor. Okay. And once again, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for watching. I hope this was of value to you, and I'll see you next time.